Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar this evening. We're just going to wait for a few people to arrive. So as we're waiting, I hope that you've get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself warm and cozy. Hope you haven't had too much of a busy day. I'll do introductions in a bit once I see everyone has arrived. It's a really fun part of the evening when you see all the participants joining. We've got Ruth with us, which I'll formally introduce in a second. And she'll be leading this webinar this evening. So we'll just wait for a few more people to come in. Get yourself comfortable. Ruth's got a cup of tea ready. I thought that set the nice relaxing environment for the evening. Okay, I think we'll kick off. So firstly, welcome to this evening. My name's Julia Paget. I'm the clinic director here at Complete Fertility. My background is as an embryologist, and I lead the organisation here. And this evening we have a wonderful person with us to lead this webinar on how to stay sane during fertility treatment. But firstly, I actually want to, before I introduce Ruth, I just want to acknowledge all of you that have joined us this evening, because I know it's a really big step to join a webinar like this, and we know that you must have gone through so much just to even sign up for something like this. So prepare yourself for hopefully a really comfortable evening, but I do warn you that Ruth is so wonderful. She will get your heartstrings going, but she's here to look after you. But I hope that, I think all of us as staff in the clinic working with her just have found her just the most wonderfully warm and receptive person to offload to. So but in her professional capacity, she's a senior fertility counsellor. She's a national expert in fertility counselling. She's the ex-chair of the British Infertility Counselling Association. She sits on the board of our regulators, the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority. And she works nationally on many advisory boards, and we use her as our patient support consultant and as an external counsellor to our business. And I just want to welcome her because she's such a wonderful connection for us to have at Complete Fertility. So welcome, Ruth. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Julia. Gosh, that was such a lovely, warm welcome. Julia said, you know, what are all my titles and how should she introduce me? And I think that what's really most important to say is that I am really just a fertility counsellor, and but it's just that I've been doing it for a very long time, and that's the most important bit out of everything that she said, because anything that you hear from me tonight is as a result of all of you, actually, and all the people that that I've been privileged enough to know and get to know over the period of time I've been doing this role. So I worked at Complete Fertility from its inception, so many years ago, and it was only when I went on the board of the regulator that I decided that I'd like to kind of spread my wings and be able to offer a service more nationally. So I've kept a good relationship with Complete Fertility, and as Julia said, do try to support and help with what they're trying to do for all of you. So welcome. I wish I could see you. I was so used to doing open evenings at Complete Fertility and being able to see people that came. So so very warm welcome to all of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a short presentation mainly about managing stress. And then there'll be an opportunity for you, well, there is an opportunity throughout for you to type in any questions that you've got that you would like me or Julia to answer for you this evening. But I think that the first thing that I want to say, which is a really weird thing to say, I know, is that I kind of wish that none of you were here. So you're here and you're listening to me and this seminar tonight because you're having difficulties in having a child, and as you will learn, I hope, throughout the evening tonight, so much is involved in that. I say learn, you're already living the experience, but there is so much that you are having to cope with, just by knowing that you may well have some fertility difficulties. So I just want to acknowledge that first of all. I'm just going to start sharing my screen now, and I'm going to kick off with the presentation for this evening. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about managing the stress of fertility treatment, because there is absolutely no doubt that it is really stressful, but there are things that you can do to make it slightly less stressful. And although we've said, that this is about keeping sane in fertility treatment, it's more about being, this expression, involuntary childless. So it's about being able to manage the situation that you find yourself in, where you would very much like to be pregnant, you would very much like to have a family, and that you can't, at the moment you haven't, but you very much wish that you had. So it's about managing the stress of that status, not just about when you're going through fertility treatment, which I think is very important to say. And absolutely, who doesn't need a hug? So I want to start by talking about you, or who I imagine you to be. And I imagine sort of that when you were younger, that you had some hopes and dreams as to how life might turn out. And they're going to include, I imagine, for some of you, things like this, that you would meet Mr., Miss, Mrs., Mix Right, whoever that is, that you may have a fulfilling job. Some of you may have had ambitions to change the world, have enough money or be filthy rich, healthy, happy, black Labrador barber coat, Wellies goes with the territory. You'd hoped maybe that you'd have a house or a flat in the country or the city, you'd have friends, but absolutely, definitely was children. And the things that are on that list, maybe apart from the black Labrador, are kind of normal things. They're not wanting to have a yacht or be a millionaire. These are regular hopes and dreams that most of you will have had, most of those for most of your life, since you've been conscious that this is sort of a position that we're working towards, if you like. And then life happens. And things happen to you in your life that you hadn't anticipated would happen in your life. So things like Mr. or Mrs. Right doesn't want to settle down, or I can't find him or her anywhere. This one turns out I prefer a Ms. to a Mr. And that creates its own difficulties, obviously, with trying to have a baby. It's taken so long for me to get my career in the right place to even consider having a child. Not enough money, not a house, I couldn't possibly take a career break. I'm still training, I'm still learning, we're not earning enough money. And then you may discover that you've got either some gynae problems, or if you're a man, you may discover that you've got some sperm problems. And then for those heterosexual couples that are trying for a baby, it's just not happening. You can have months and months of unwanted periods arriving and having to deal with that. And sex that used to be absolutely amazing when you met your partner now becomes timed, a drag, something that has to be done at the right time, and not much fun at all. There will be others of you where your partner may have had an illness. I'm particularly thinking about cancers where their fertility is affected. Or you may find that, you find out that, oh my goodness, how did I get to be 36 if you're a woman? I spent all my life trying not to get pregnant, and now it turns out that I can't, and I feel like my fertility is falling off a cliff. And this one, all my friends are pregnant. So this is the kind of stuff I imagine that's been around for some of you, which is a complete mismatch from what your hopes and dreams were originally. So I want to talk about, in connection with that mismatch, is why is this a stressful situation? How does this situation create emotional distress? And what happens is that we feel distress when our hopes and dreams are threatened. So when there is a mismatch between what we expected to happen and what the reality is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about stress and the sort of biology of it a little bit, but just how it applies to what some of you may be experiencing. Because stress is a physical and emotional response to a threat. And stress itself has enabled our survival. And it's important for you and all of us and your friends and family to understand what it is that is the threat here. And as you can see, the threat here is, I won't have a family. That is the threat that is hanging over you. And the response is fight or flight with the associated stress symptoms. I'm also going to say a little bit more about that a bit later. But what I wanted to answer this question, which is one that I'm asked a lot, is that, you know, if I'm stressed, will that affect being able to conceive, whether naturally or with treatment? You will have read my pet hate, and I'm sure that people have said it to you, which is that you need to relax. Your job's too stressful. If you only relax, go on holiday, and you will get pregnant. And you're thinking, well, actually, I don't have a male partner, so that's not going to happen, or my tubes are blocked, so I can't see that any amount of relaxation is going to make a difference. And even for those of you who have unexplained, so-called unexplained infertility, which is very difficult to kind of get your head around, really, as to what could be going on there. But even for those of you with unexplained infertility, I'm sure that there have been many times where you felt relaxed, but you still haven't got pregnant. So is it true that stress can actually cause infertility and stop you getting pregnant? Well, here's the biology bit. So no, there is no link between levels of stress and birth rates. And there's been quite a lot of research around this. We are, as human beings, we are programmed to reproduce, and some of the highest birth rates are in areas of conflict. So if you compare your work stress, the stressful things that are in your life, then not being able to conceive, with perhaps the stress that's going on in, I don't know, I was thinking about Syria with the bombs falling and people were still getting pregnant where their life is threatened. So it's really important to know that that stress itself does not affect birth rates. However, there is a however. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong bit. So my however, there we are, is that some of the things that we do to cope with stress can have a detrimental effect on our fertility. So, you know, they're the obvious ones, aren't they? Drinking, smoking, overeating, not having sex. I mean, if you're very stressed, you're not really going to want to have sex particularly, or some people might be having too much sex. Not having enough exercise, some people over-exercising if you're feeling stressed. So there are things that that you may do to manage your stress that could interfere with your fertility long term. But I'll go on to say a little bit about how in the short term they probably don't matter a jot. I've put a link down at the bottom, which is no good to you on Zoom. I appreciate that, but we will share this with you afterwards, because last year in London, the British Fertility Society and the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists held a fertility forum for patients. And there's a number of presentations for patients, a number of talks that happened throughout the day. And one of them was a talk on what comes first, stress or infertility, by a renowned professor who's done a lot of research in this area called Jackie Boyvan. And all the talks are available for you to watch and listen to online, and we'll make sure that we give you that link if you would like it, if you want to read a little bit more about what the professor says and the research says about stress. So what I'm saying is, don't take my word for it. I would really like you to learn a little bit more from the expert. So how are you doing? What is this response? Because I've said that stress is a response to a threat. So when we're talking about facing fertility issues, what actually is going on? What are you thinking? What are you doing? What is your behaviour? What is this stress response? I wish I could see your faces, because I'm sure that some of these would really resonate with some of you. I mean, hopefully not all of them, but I know from a lot of the people I've seen that a lot of them are on the list at different times. So I'm just going to go through a few of these. You know, the rapid heart rate, feeling butterflies in your stomach, feeling sweaty. I mean, that's a completely physiological response to a threat. I like to talk about tigers. I like to talk about what you would do if you had a tiger in front of you. And unfortunately, some of these things here are a part of the fight or flight response that you would activate if that was the situation, if you had an actual tiger in front of you. Although, you know, obviously sex isn't going to be on your mind if you have a tiger in front of you. I appreciate that. But some of these physical symptoms are. And I'm sure that, you know, you have felt tearful. The excess Googling, I think that's, I'm sure that some of you will recognise that, because it's like a search to resolve a situation. So you find yourself in a stressful situation, you're having these kind of responses, you might be feeling really low, tearful, anxious, and one of the ways, you know, the fight or flight, the fight is, okay, well, I need to do something about it. So, and that's where the excess Googling comes. Have I covered every base? Have I done everything that I possibly could do in order to resolve this, this stressful situation? I think that that the other thing that I want to say about these responses is that that feeling stressed or having some anxiety is actually an appropriate response, and it shows that you are working well. Now, I know that can sound a bit sort of counterintuitive in a way, because nobody wants to be feeling anxious and stressed. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that anxiety and stress are your friends, because they're like an alert system that tells you that something's wrong, and that you need to take some action. And what's good about some of these that I think that a lot of us are not very good at is that some of them are very visible. So not only are they an alert to yourself that something is wrong, they're also an alert to people who love and care for you. I always think as a counsellor, you know, how fortuitous it is that crying is something that's visible, because if you're crying, other people will notice. And some of this is about recognising that you need some help, either from other people, or that there's something about your situation that needs to change. I'll again say a little bit more about that in a second. So those are the kind of responses, but what are they a response to? What is the threat? And the kind of things I've put on here are the kind of things that can elicit that kind of anxiety or stress. So those of you who have met me before will know that I'm a bit sort of tongue-in-cheek sometimes, but you know, I had a donut. So obviously having a donut means that you've just had a donut, but your mind will say, well, that means that I'm not going to get pregnant because it's another time that I haven't been healthy and I'm supposed to be eating healthily and I haven't eaten healthily. So there are lots of things that I put on this list. You know, I've had a coffee, I'm supposed to not be eating caffeine. I've read that you should be getting X number of follicles when you have your baseline scan, and I haven't got that many follicles. I'm doing the injections, I'm not sure it all went in. Oh my goodness. That elicits its own stress response. Your periods come, your partner keeps forgetting to take their supplements, you keep forgetting to take your supplements, you had a glass of wine, you didn't have sex at the right time. This other one, you know, another birthday or another Christmas with not being pregnant. And on face value, you know, if you and I sort of weren't familiar with the territory of dealing with fertility issues, your friends and family and colleagues can say, well, you know, how are these things stressful? You know, what is it? what is it about these things that you guys are feeling stressful? Because clearly they're not life or death things that are on this list. They're not tigers in front of you. But the fact is that all of these things in your head mean this. And what happens is that in your head, I'm spotting means that I'm not going to have a baby, or work's ridiculously stressful because I'm so stressed and I'm not able to relax, I'm not going to have a baby. Some of these things, I mean, if both of your tubes are blocked, then clearly you're not going to have a baby naturally, so there is some truth in that. But what happens, or what we do, is that we catastrophize. So having a donut is literally having a donut. It doesn't mean no baby. But what happens with your thoughts and your feelings is that it can feel like there's things that you're doing which mean that you're not going to be able to have a baby. And that's where the threat comes in. So, and I want to be really clear here that these symptoms that I was talking about before, these symptoms here, these things that happen to you or could be happening to you, happen to you often in response to some thoughts you're having, and sometimes not actual events that are like tigers in front of us to respond to. Some of them are, some of them aren't. I will talk a bit about friends' pregnancy announcements, but I think that the thing to say about that is that, you know, with a new pregnancy announcement, it can feel like a death knell. But what's interesting is what we think about that, because a friend's pregnancy announcement doesn't mean that you're going to have a baby or that you're not going to have a baby. It doesn't mean either. It just means that she's got a pregnancy now and you haven't. But it doesn't mean no baby in the long term, even though your reaction can feel like it does mean that. So that's all very well, isn't it? But all this psychobabble that I'm talking about whether things are real or not, you know, what can you actually do about it? And how can you actually manage? This is what we're talking about. How can you actually manage this situation that you find yourself in? So with any stress management, you absolutely do not need to buy books about it or go on training courses necessarily, because it's simple, she says. Oh, if only. But the way to reduce the feelings that you're having is either to reduce the threat or manage the symptoms. So that's how you get rid of a stress management response. So if only it were that easy. If only it were that easy. So the things that I'm talking about here are things that are, they're things to do with the thoughts that you're having and the feelings that you're having, rather than actual things that you might do, I think. And I'll explain a little bit more about this. So refuse to engage with the negative thoughts. I just want to give you an example about engaging with negative thoughts, and particularly about the spotting. So let's say, and I'm thinking about spotting that can happen during a 2-week wait, for example. There are many examples I could give for this, but I'm just choosing this particular one. That some people, I mean, obviously it is very stressful waiting to find out if you're pregnant or not, and I just want to be very clear about something that you all know, is that the 2-week wait isn't just for fertility treatment. A lot of you, well, I'd say a lot of you in heterosexual relationships would have been having loads of 2-week waits. I mean, you know, months and months of 2-week waits for a very long time. And you know, I don't want to make assumptions about people that are in same-sex relationships either, because some of you may have been trying with donors outside the clinic and not had success. So this concept of a 2-week wait will be familiar probably to nearly everyone that I'm speaking to today. And that wonder, that sort of those feelings that you have about whether this month you'll be pregnant or whether as a result of this treatment, you might be pregnant. And lots of things will happen during that time that you will think things about. So, you know, this is where I start groping myself because I'm feeling my boobs. So, you know, you'll feel your boobs, think, do they feel the same? Are they a bit different? Are they a bit lumpier? A bit, you know, is that sickness because I ate this, or is it actual sickness? I mean, there'll be loads of things that you will be paying attention to in terms of symptoms that you may be having, one of which could be that you go to the toilet and you're spotting a little bit. Not if you're a man listening to this, I should say, but anyway, you might be spotting a bit. And what happens with that is that there's a whole range, there's millions of things you could think about that, millions of things you could think about spotting. And the negative thoughts are that you choose the one, potentially, that means, oh, that means I'm not pregnant. Oh gosh, there's blood, that means I'm not pregnant. I have a very funny way of representing this, but sometimes having funny ways of things that stick in your head, is that that I want you to imagine that that you're in a school and there's a row of coat pegs, you know, the row of coat pegs that you see in a school with names above the coat pegs, and I don't know, there could be a Ruth, a Julia, whatever, but names above the coat pegs. So with any experience that we have, there are labels above these coat pegs, and we literally choose which peg to hang our coat on. So let's take the spotting example. So one of the reasons that you're spotting could be that I'm not pregnant. So that's the label above that particular coat peg. It could be that the level of hormones is dipped. It could be just one of those things that happens in early pregnancy. And how you deal with that depends on the response that you get, because if you say to yourself, well, this is quite a regular thing that happens in early pregnancy, you're not going to have the tiger response, as I call it, as you would if you said, well, this means that I'm not pregnant. So there are some things I'm trying to say that you are in control of here, even though it looks like you're not. And when I say refuse to engage with the negative thoughts, is that it's like a bit of a negotiation in a way. So stay with me on this one, and hopefully you'll get what I mean. Is that we all have negative thoughts about ourselves. I'm having a negative thought right now that I'm being a bit garrulous and talking quite a lot. But you know, we have negative thoughts about ourselves, and if you engage with them, so if you in your head start to ruminate on that negative thought, you know, you could go down a very dark hole and end up with feeling that you're absolutely rubbish and that you failed at everything, because that's where the negative thoughts go. And when I say don't engage with them, what I mean is that it's a negotiation. So if I said to you, give me, please could you give me £1,000 for doing this tonight? You might say, no, Ruth, I'll give you 10p. So that means that I know that you're going to give me something because you've engaged with it. So what I'm saying is that the negative thoughts come in and you are just saying, no, I'm not having that. I'm not going to engage with that negative thought. I'm not even going to go down there. I'm not even going to acknowledge it, because it's, at the moment, it isn't true. There will be a lot, there's a lot around this, but it is, it's about a cognitive based therapy where your thoughts, the thoughts that you have about something, actually lead to a physical reaction. So and this goes into the next point, really, about noticing when you're catastrophizing. So that is something that I could have just done there. You know, you're talking too much, you're talking too quickly. You always do that when you do presentations. You're crap at presentations. You shouldn't do them. And there I go, and Julia will ask me to do another one. I think I couldn't possibly do another one because it was so awful. And that is me catastrophizing about the way in which I'm doing this tonight. And we can all do this. I'm sure that you recognise that too. Plan rather than worry. So there is some more research that says that to get through fertility difficulties, it's important that you actively manage the process rather than be passive about it. So I just want to explain what the difference is here. So being passive is a state where you're kind of hoping for the best. You're not necessarily taking any action. You'll be worrying that it's not happening, but you're not really taking any action to manage it. And rather than being anxious about what's to come, what I would suggest is that you make a plan about what's to come, and that you can write down that plan as to what you might do in this situation, what you might do in that situation. So having fertility treatment is so difficult, so many different stages, so many different hurdles to get through. And the first one is before you even start, your period's got to arrive at a time that you want it to arrive, and you've got to be in a position to be able to have time off work potentially to go in and have your scan. And so it's about, the worry, what if it comes on a Friday, what if it comes on a Saturday, what if it comes when I'm supposed to be doing this presentation at work? How can you plan around those things rather than worrying about them? Having realistic expectations. I mean, this is so hard, but really important to say something about, because you all know what the success rates are for fertility treatment. I'm sure that that you would have looked them up, or you'd have had a conversation with one of your medical consultants. Whether you have looked at that to the nth degree or not, the overall, this isn't to say that these are complete fertility success rates, and it's different for different age groups and different diagnoses, of course, but overall, per cycle, approximately a quarter of people will have a live baby. So we'll give birth to a live baby, about a quarter per cycle started. So your odds might be better than that or slightly worse than that, but that's the overall figure. And lots of people think that's just so rubbish, especially those of you who are having to pay for treatment. You're paying for a 25. Let's be generous, a 25 to 40% chance of having a live birth. But of course it does work, and this is the thing. But when I say about being realistic, is that, for example, the NICE guidelines say that that really people should expect to have 3 cycles of treatment, because 3 cycles of treatment give you a really good chance, because the cumulative pregnancy rates are for some age groups are approaching 70% after 3 cycles have a live baby. So it's not that there's no hope, by the way, but it is about being realistic. That, let's say that that you're a same-sex couple and you need donor insemination. You'll be very, very lucky. You'll be one of the lucky ones if it works first time. But if you plan that you might need 3, you might need 4, you might need 5. I liken it, which is perhaps a bit macabre, but it's like a course of chemotherapy that you need for cancer treatment. Is that, people understand that you need chemotherapy maybe over 6 months, and that's sort of that's the treatment. And in a way, with fertility, that's the same. Is that the treatment isn't necessarily just 1 cycle; it's more than 1 cycle, and that makes it very complicated when, and I won't go on about this too much, I promise, but when the NHS doesn't fund enough fertility treatment, because it wouldn't be such a big deal knowing that you had to have more, a few cycles potentially, if you didn't have to pay for it. So I appreciate that. Preparing for news. So every time that you go to a fertility clinic, and as lovely as the staff are at Complete Fertility, there is usually some news of some sort. There's either a test result, or you're having a scan to see how your follicles are developing. If you're having IVF, you may be having an egg collection and you want to know how many eggs you got. Then there's the nail biting time in IVF of wondering how many have fertilized and waiting for that phone call from embryology to see how many embryos there are. I mean, you've got the picture. I don't need to tell some of you who've been through this just how difficult that is. And I've put prepare for news because even though there are these difficult hurdles, I think it's really important that that when you go to the clinic, or it might be Zoom these days, but when you have a consultation or you go have a procedure, that it could go either way, that it's good or bad news. And I know that some of you will be having treatment on your own. and some of you will come to the clinic on your own. But it's just to say that it could go either way, and to make sure that you're prepared, that to not maybe have to dash straight off to work afterwards, or to have a friend or a partner present if it's possible. I mean, not necessarily in the clinic, but in the car park if it's possible. I've said a bit about active management, about deciding to do things. So actively manage the problem. So one of the things that that when I speak to people, especially when they've had bad news, is that, you know, people talk about duvet days, don't they? And they're having, you know, that they couldn't do anything all weekend and they're really upset, and, you know, their friends were out, but one of their friends is pregnant, and it's very difficult to socialise. This was before COVID. So when I'm saying actively manage the problem, it's about owning the fact that you need a duvet day and saying, right, today this is what I'm going to do, and actually making a decision to do it rather than drifting into it. So, because that's treating yourself with some kindness and some compassion, and it's recognizing that you've got all of these things going on, that this is not a normal situation. Okay, this is that living with involuntary childlessness is not a normal situation, as you can see. So much distress, so much to manage, so much putting your face on, as I call it, with people, that sometimes you need some downtime, and it's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is decide to do that. This last point is a little bit controversial, because obviously here's me saying how stressful IVF treatment is, and at the same time saying work towards other life goals. You're thinking, oh, you know, I'd like to be able to do that, but how do you do that when you're a basket case because of IVF? And I think that what I want most for all of you, even though I don't know who's on here and I can't see you, but what I want most for all of you is for you not to look back and feel like you've had wasted months or wasted years of your life. I can't say it enough that, you know, your life's as important today as it is when your fertility journey has some sort of resolution, you know, whatever that looks like. And although having a child, having a baby, having a family, or even for some of you having your second child, there is no other goal that is anywhere near as important. There are other things that you might like to do in your life, and I think it's important as much as possible to try and keep those other goals going. And the way that I'd put that is very interesting, isn't it? Is that your friends and family who've got children, you know, some of them, perish the thought, they've also got good jobs, or they also help in the community, or they also volunteer, or they also climb mountains. So it's allowing for the possibility that there are other things that could be important to you, and not putting the whole of your life on hold. And I think that that's sort of why there are people like me in fertility clinics, and why the staff are trained to support you as much as they can, because we don't want your life to be just this, because for you to have any regrets about it being just this, and want to help you to manage all the kind of psychological side of it, so that you are able to do other things. I'm not going to go into such detail with the managing the symptoms thing, but I do want to say just a couple of things about the things that are on this list. A lot of you will have come across things like Headspace apps and the IVF apps that can help with mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness and meditation, I mean, they're very sort of I think of the moment, aren't they, really, that everybody's doing some sort of mindfulness or meditation. But I think that the thing to say about managing fertility problems is about this thing that I put at the top there, is staying present, which is about being where you are now. You know, I was saying earlier about there's no tiger in front of you right now, because when you're experiencing some of these symptoms that you're having in relation to the stress, it's important to realize in this moment that there's nothing threatening you right now. There is nothing threatening your survival. And this is the thing about grounding exercises, and this is the sort of thing that people do to bring themselves down from panic attacks, is just say, look, here I am, I'm just looking outside my window, you know, it's dark, I'm warm enough, I'm quite warm actually, I'm sitting in this room, I'm doing this thing. So it's about being able to stay present in order to reduce your anxiety. I've said that the reaction that you're having in a way is appropriate to the situation that you're in. So because this is a very difficult situation, it's not easy, then you are going to experience some symptoms of stress and anxiety. It kind of goes with the territory. But I think that what's important for your survival of this and your day-to-day well-being is that you don't have to experience this all the time. And sometimes when people speak to me, they think I'm going to disapprove of the things they're doing to distract themselves from what's going on. But it's so important that you do have some distraction, because you can't feel these things all the time. And for most people, the best things that distract are things that require your attention right now. So, I mean, goodness me, for me, sometimes, I mean, this is going to sound a bit twee, but, you know, if you can't sleep at night, it's doing things like your times tables backwards, because you've got to actually concentrate on that, which means that you get rid of the thoughts which are stopping you from sleeping in your head, because you've got to focus on getting your 12 times table right, that it kind of takes you out of that that moment of negative thoughts. Other things, though, in the distraction category and relaxation really is about doing things that are creative, that you enjoy. I did say to a woman the other day who is now pregnant, but after a very, very long time, and again, you know, I could go on for ages about how people think, oh, you're pregnant now, so everything's all right. Well, of course, if you've had a long journey to get there, then it's going to be a very anxious pregnancy, particularly to begin with. And this woman was very anxious, and I just found out that she liked baking. And I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but being able to follow a recipe and actually do the shopping for the baking and all those things, and she actually made some cakes for her neighbours and took them round to them and so I'm not saying that baking is the answer, but I'm saying that things that where you've actually got to pay attention to something more than listening to music where your mind can drift off. Even exercise, sometimes your mind can drift off. It's things that require your presence, if you like, that can be quite helpful. And I just, the last thing I wanted to say is about things that top you up. So I imagine that for a lot of you, I call it this, it's a bit silly, but your cupboard is bare. That's what I say. Your cupboard of nice things and things that top us up and fill us up is a bit depleted at the moment. And I mean, the thing is that there's a reality to this anyway, with COVID happening, that all of us are sort of feeling much emptier than we were, because we're not having the interactions with people that we were, and not able to do the things that we were doing. But even more important for you, where a lot of what you're doing is in pursuit of this goal and this dream, that it's important that you do things that are going to fill up your cupboard. And again, this might sound counterintuitive, but one of the things that is so makes us all feel good is doing stuff for other people. And that's the kind of thing that can divert you from what you're doing. And there's plenty of opportunities now to do some good things for other people if you've got the time, because that's going to help with your self-esteem. Because if you were talking to me now, you know, some of you will be saying that you just feel such a failure sometimes, and that, you know, it's something that everybody else seems to be able to do and you can't do it, and you feel left behind. And I think that you are more than your, you know, your sperm and your eggs. There's a lot more to you. And I think that if you're able to do things for others, you're going to realise, you know, that there's a lot more to you than just trying to do the fertility treatment. So that's just an idea. Okay. So preparation before, during and after treatment. So I just want to say a little bit about this really, is that we're talking a bit about treatment, but it's about all the time really, because there's so many different phases of fertility treatment. And I've put a few things on this list, because what I've always been very conscious of in all the time that I've worked in this arena, which seems to be a very long time now, is the amount of stuff you do to get physically healthy before trying to conceive. Well, perhaps not before trying to conceive, but definitely when you realise that it might be an issue. And some of you will be spending a lot of money on supplements. Some of you will be going to the gym more than you were, trying to be healthy, your 10 fruit and vegetables a day, whatever it is. There'll be lots of physical things, cutting out caffeine, cutting out alcohol. And I would say this, wouldn't I, because I'm a counsellor type person, but I wonder how much preparation you do for your emotional health and your mental health. And it's really important that you learn about anxiety and the types of things that you can do to manage anxiety. I've talked to some people about having a kind of a crib sheet to bring you down. So if you're familiar with some of the things that you're like to get anxious about, then you can have like a one-page sheet that you can look at, which gives you ideas as to things you can do when you're actually in that situation and can't think straight. Managing family, friends and social situations. I'm realizing I'm talking a lot, so I don't want to sort of say huge amounts about it, but one of the things that's very important here is that you don't know how long this is going to go on for. That's the thing where you can feel quite out of control, because choosing not to see your friends while you're going through fertility treatment, when I say see, obviously these days I'm saying that could be online, but choosing not to see family or friends because it's too upsetting if they've got children is okay if the situation is resolved in 6 months or even a year. But if you find yourself still trying to have a baby for a longer period of time, it becomes very difficult if you've cut off all your support systems. So I think that the advice I'd give about that is to think about which relationships are worth keeping, which relationships with people that you want to endure, and being able to manage those and let those people know what you're going through if you can. Obviously the self-care, the active management of stress, we've talked a little bit about. I do want to say something about how lonely this experience can be, and it's sometimes being compared to getting a cancer diagnosis in terms of the enormity of the distress that having fertility difficulties can cause, and it's a lot of people talk about grief around fertility, because even though, as it is today, you may not know yet whether you're going to have a child, you know that you haven't got a child now, and if you've been able to conceive naturally or quickly, then you may well have a child now. So it's kind of the loss of time as well that you're dealing with. And when I've put down there someone to talk to who gets it, because unfortunately with fertility, and you'll know, is that not everybody really understands the deep distress that accompanies this, and it's sometimes difficult to talk to friends and for them to have empathy for what you're going through, and particularly when it goes on for a while. So it is really important that you do, even if you don't participate, but that you do look at forums and find support, maybe from Fertility Network UK or our particular patient support network, so that you know that you're not alone. Because sometimes the friends that you've had who don't share this experience with you won't be the best friends to have while you're going through it, because they're having very different life experiences to you. So very important to try and find someone to talk to who gets it. And this is all about preparation. This is before you even start, really. Really want to say about this thing about healthy ways of coping and forgiving the unhealthy ones. This goes back to the donut. Is that again, you don't know how long this regime is going to last. And it's ridiculous to say this really, because of course having the occasional whatever it is doesn't matter a bit, but it's about being able to forgive yourself for some of the more unhealthy options that you might choose to cope, because they don't necessarily add up to having a baby. well, they don't add up to having a baby. There's no necessarily about it. They don't add up to having a baby. And I just want to say a little bit about that when we're talking about sort of support groups and what you find on the internet, is that fertility and trying to meet the needs of fertility patients has become big business. And there's so many things, you know, if you Google, I don't know, managing stress in fertility, for example, there are so many things that you can buy that people swear by, and there are so many things that you would read on the internet forums that people swear by. So one of the things that I joke about, although it's actually not funny, is there is a thing on the internet about eating pineapple. That if you eat pineapple, then that's going to help you to conceive. And I've actually had people say to me, well, I don't know how much pineapple. I don't know whether, do I have to have one every day? Do you eat the skin? I don't, you know, what's a healthy amount of pineapple? And the thing is, with all of these things that you read about, is that it's giving a notion somehow that you're in control, and therefore either to blame or to be celebrated if that you're in control of whether you get pregnant or not. And of course, there are some things that would be a very bad idea if you're trying to get pregnant, but I'm talking about things like, you know, getting drunk, smoking, a very bad idea, but those are the sort of things where there is evidence that could interfere with your fertility. But it's very easy to think that, oh, well, I didn't do this, or I should have done that, or if only I'd taken those supplements, that would have made a difference. Whereas we're talking minuscule amounts of difference, because actually this is something that, out of all the things in your life, is that you're not in control of the outcome, and that's really, really hard, really hard. I'm nearly done. I just wanted to say that that to try and support you, Complete Fertility have got a lot of things in place. Some of which aren't immediately obvious. And it's interesting, isn't it? I've put sort of staff support and staff training at the top there, because mostly people don't want to go and see a counsellor, for example, don't want to sort of put their hand up and say, I'm not coping very well. And supporting people as they're going through fertility treatment is the job of every single member of staff that works at the fertility clinic. And that's why Julia, as head of the clinic, you know, spends a lot of time in training staff and coaching staff, has a coaching system for staff, and the staff are trained not just in how to show you how to administer injections, but also to support you through your treatment. So I think that's really important, because they want to, they want to be able to recognise when people aren't coping very well and be able to suggest interventions to help you. So there are a number of things that Complete Fertility offer if you want them. And we've been amazed actually at how the patient support group on Facebook has taken off. And I know that not everybody comments on that, but I think that there is a comfort to know that other people are going through the same thing as you. And if you haven't joined, I would encourage you to. You don't need to contribute, but it's just nice to feel that that you're amongst people who really do understand. So this is it really. We are here to help. I'm here tonight to try and answer some of your questions for sure. And generally, Complete Fertility are here to try and help make this more bearable. Sometimes when when I meet people and they say, "What do you do for a living?" and I say, "Oh, you know, I'm a fertility counsellor," I sort of feel a bit humble about it, because with all the people that I see who come and see me, who I talk to, you know, I absolutely don't do anything to get you a baby. Not like all the clever people in the clinic, the embryologists and the doctors who are doing things, but me and other people in the clinic just want to make this period of your life just a bit more bearable, so that you can manage it and you can manage to do the things you need to do to give you the best chance. So I'll bring Julia back in now, and I don't know whether there's been any questions, Julia, or whether you want to make any comments about what I've said, but thank you for listening to me.
Wow, thank you, Ruth. I mean, it's so powerful listening to you, and so humbling hear you speak. And actually, as I mentioned to you before you started talking, when I mentioned to a couple of staff in the clinic, Ruth Wilde's about to give a webinar, those staff were like, well, I need to log on now. And so we've got some staff listening to you as well, because you can hear the emotion in my voice. I frequently tear up when I talk to you about our patients, because as you know, I care as well so much about all of you listening. And I can't put into words in the way you can so eloquently how much we care about you all, and how we kind of really understand that deep wish you have for a child and completing your family. And we do anything. We wish we could wave a magic wand and do this for you. However, it's such a roller coaster, and we're so lucky to have someone like you that can put that into words for our patients. And I'd like to just acknowledge our patients listening to this evening, because I think it may have unlocked if it does this to me, it will unlock a lot of emotions for them just listening to you. And I think I want to just say to all of you listening to take time for yourself this evening as well, because this may have unlocked quite a lot just listening to you, and that maybe you need to put some things in place just this evening, whatever that might be, to protect yourself after, just to digest what we've gone through with Ruth, because it's been really powerful, and a lot of these things, just to put them into words. And for me, I think just to comment on something you said, which was I just found so interesting as well, was that the tears, the crying, as you know, I am someone I can openly admit I'm a crier. However, there's so much shame around that, and I think it was really interesting to hear you say that crying is an evolutionary response to say I need some help, which is a lovely thing to hear. So yeah, we do have some questions, but while I'm reading out some questions for you, I just encourage anyone out there, please use the Q&A bar at the bottom. It's completely anonymous. I'm not going to say anybody's name. No one will see the names. Do write a question to Ruth, and I'll read it out now. And also this webinar will be on our website, so you can go back to it and look at that as well in your own time. So questions that we've got, Ruth, we'll just do a couple because we have used up quite a bit of amazing time with you. This question that I can see here is, how do you stay positive for another cycle when treatment has failed?
Oh my goodness, gosh. Well, the interesting thing about that question is first of all, who says you need to stay positive? So I would question that straight away, because that falls into the category of what I would say are the shoulds around fertility treatment. And I think that there's a whole list of ways in which you think you should be behaving, like the relaxing thing. There's a whole way that this is on the list, so I should be positive, and if I'm not positive about it, then it won't work. I think that what you need for the next cycle is hope, and that's different from this sort of the being positive and being bouncy about the fact that you've got to go through another cycle of fertility treatment. But the thing is that each cycle of fertility treatment, as Julie would be better to tell you this than me, but anyway, each cycle of fertility treatment is its own thing. It's its own entity. It doesn't mean anything that the last one didn't work. You know, the cumulative success rates are, as I said, they are very good. And the point is that with each treatment cycle that you have, as I was sort of comparing it to the chemotherapy, and sorry, I do make some very odd comparisons, but it's what you need. It's like you are committed to going through what you need to do in order to resolve your fertility difficulties. And I think that sometimes, and often because it costs so much money, and you know, you've got so much invested in it, that it can feel like a complete and utter waste of money. But actually, you know, you are just following the next stage of the treatment, which is really important towards your goals. So how do I remain positive? Well, don't tell yourself you should be positive. Say that you have got reason for hope, because there is reason for hope, because you wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've got another question here. Perfect question that someone's just written in. How do you stop the feeling of being majorly annoyed, in her words or his words, if not worse, at someone saying that they're pregnant? It's a great question.
Majorly annoyed, I love that term. I've heard many others that are not majorly annoyed. I mean, I spend a lot of time wondering about this and wondering how to best help people without being twee about it and saying that there's a perfect solution. Because, I mean, the first thing to say about that is that obviously you're envious, and why wouldn't you be? So I mean, I think it's really important just to say, yeah, that's what's going on here. But I want, I suppose that I want to break it down into what are you envious about, and I can be a bit sort of tongue-in-cheek about this as well, really, because, you know, the people that have said their friends, their sister, whoever it is that's just announced their pregnancy, and the thing is that we feel envious of one thing about their life, don't we? We feel envious about their pregnancy. And I think that I almost want you to have a bit of humour around, if that's possible. Forgive me for saying this, because I want to ask you, do you want their partner? You know, are you after their partner? Do you want their house? Do you like their dog? Is it their dress sense that you're envious of? Because what we all do is we pick a particular characteristic that is something that we feel we haven't got, and we fixate on it. And I think that I would just encourage you to think that actually, I don't want their whole life. You know, it's just that bit of the pregnancy, that it's that bit that I want. And actually, the thing that you want isn't even her pregnancy. You don't want her pregnancy. You don't want her baby. What you want is her happiness, isn't it? That is the thing. And you could say that about anything that you feel that you haven't got that someone else has got. I feel like that if somebody says they've lost 3 stone in weight. It's just like, oh, you know, and I am being a bit facetious about it because I know it's not the same thing, but it is just that we fixate on the thing that we haven't got. And I would just encourage you to think about the things that you have in your life that you like, that that person who is pregnant has different things. But also, you know, going back to that very briefly, that slide where I said that how we catastrophize is that for some reason we turn other people's pregnancies into, this is never going to happen for me. And that's like those coat pegs I was talking about, is that you're choosing that particular one because there's no saying that, well, there could be for some of you, I appreciate that, but at the moment while you're going through treatment, there's no saying that that is what's going to happen to you. And my hot tip, okay, final hot tip about this is that it's about, again, wanting those relationships that are important to you to endure, and really not worrying about what the social etiquette is for the others. So a couple of things you can do. One is that if you have to go out with pregnant women, or if you have to go out and there's an announcement, make sure there's somebody there that I would call your advocate, so that when the conversation starts to just be about pregnancy and babies, is that she, not you, or he, not you, changes the conversation. So it doesn't look like you don't want to speak about it, that someone else has got your back, which I think is really important, that you take somebody with you who's absolutely got your back. The other thing is to try and, if your friends know about this, is to try and manage how you hear about these things, because a lot of people are very considerate and would text you and say that they were going to announce it at this particular thing or whatever. So to give you some time to put your face on, because that's what you're going to have to do, isn't it? This is the choice that you make. You either don't mix with these people, or you literally you do a performance. So you decide that I'm going to go to this thing, or I'm going to engage this person. I'm going to put my I'm all right face on, and I'm going to do it for 2 hours, and then I'm going to come home and cry, because it's worth preserving that relationship. But I mean, as you can see, Julian, I will shut up about it, really, is that this is not easy. The feelings you're having about your friends being pregnant, they're just very real and need to be honoured, I think is what I'd say, rather than pretending that you're all right.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Ruth. We've had a lovely comment here, actually, that I'll read out before one final question. So somebody's written in to say, I just wanted to say thank you for the buddy system, which is great to hear. We've been paired with a great couple and have made awesome friends. It's made our journey so much easier talking to someone who just gets it. So thank you. Thank you for that feedback. That's really wonderful to hear that buddy system worked out for you. So I would encourage others to try that. That's brilliant. So one final question for Ruth then. How do you deal with going through IVF treatment and failures with having to be very careful around others during COVID? So that's a really poignant question at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It is very, very hard, isn't it? And I think I've spoken to people with very different feelings about this, because for a lot of people, the sort of not complete lockdown, but the enforced more social isolation has actually been quite helpful, because they haven't had to participate in lots of social occasions that they haven't wanted to, you know, or things where they're having to see pregnant women, but that's not the case for everybody. And I do think that what would normally help in situations where you're going through something tough is touch, funnily enough, isn't it? It's being able to be physically close to people and have people to know that people have got your back. And of course, you can't do that at the moment. You can't sort of be close to people and be physically touching. It sounds a bit creepy, doesn't it? Physically touching other people. But I think that it's about being able to control what you can within this. And in the vein of preparing, I mean, we've now got a long, hard winter, all of us, haven't we? And for those of you who are intending to have some treatment or to keep trying whatever it is, you know, you're going to have some ups and downs in the periods, you know, whilst we're in sort of deepest, darkest winter, which isn't going to be easy. So it is about preparing for the things that you can do. I don't have an easy answer for it for any of us, but the things that make most of us feel good, as I've said, it's doing things to help other people. And there's a wealth of opportunities during COVID that you can do things like that, and obviously getting out in the fresh air, because you can still do that. That's not been stopped.
Great. Okay, we've actually just had one final question, although we have gone quite over the hour, so we'll try and do it quite briefly. The question is, how do I share or explain how I feel to my husband who can't understand?
Oh my goodness, gosh, come and see me for counselling. I mean, definitely. I mean that definitely, by the way, because that's not a short answer in particular. But I do just want to say something about, at the risk of being shouted at, if you could please shout at me on the Q&A. But gender stereotypes are unfortunately alive and well in the arena of fertility, and I say to people quite often is that in a heterosexual couple, or actually doesn't matter, same-sex couple doesn't matter, but one of you will perhaps wear your emotions on your sleeve, be upset and worried, anxious about it, and want to talk about it a lot, and the other, I call it that they will just go into the garage. So kind of not want to have anything to do with this. It's too overwhelming. I'm going to deal with it in a different way to you. I don't want to talk about it. And I guess this is the kind of situation that you're talking about potentially. The hottest tip that I've got just in about 10 seconds is that you agree that you will have some time every day that you see each other, that you will have some time where you talk about this, but that it's got a fence around it. So what I mean by that is that, so it's not too threatening. You might start with 10 minutes so that your partner knows that you're not going to spill over all day long wanting to talk about this when he or she wants to talk about other things and get on with other things in their life. So I think there's merit in setting up what I call a business meeting about fertility. So you say, okay, whenever it is, we're going to have this 20 minutes. You're going to set a timer, literally set a timer. And you get the opportunity to offload. He or she gets the opportunity to say, there, or I don't know what to say. And then it's done. For more longer term communication about this, I think that what we forget about is that, or maybe we don't appreciate, is that does your partner probably wants this as much as you do, but just doesn't know how to express that. And that's often what it is. And that one person, usually the person not going through the treatment, feels like they've got to be strong. And being strong doesn't look like how I'm behaving tonight, your emotions spilling out and all the rest of it. So I know that's not an overall answer, but I'd be happy to talk more with you about that.
That's a great answer. Thanks, Ruth. And I think that's really important just to note, our counsellors are here for you. We've got Ruth and Judy, and we'd encourage you to access them as much as possible. We could talk to Ruth all evening. We could do 3 hours of this, I know, but we have to be reasonable on everyone's time. So is there anything you want to say in summary, Ruth, before we say good night?
I just want to say it says a really odd thing, isn't it, to hold the faith. So, and when I say hold the faith, what I mean really is that there will be resolution. And I know that today, the only resolution that you can possibly think of is having a baby. But you know, I use the sort of analogy is that when you're you and your partner, or just you know, when you're in your care home and you're 87 years old, that this period of time in your life, you'll be able to make some sort of sense of it. But when you're going through something, you can't make any sense of it, and it's just angst. But it's a very twee expression, isn't it, that this will pass. You know, you will become, I don't know how old you are now, but you will become 40, 50, 60, 70, and you won't be in this all the time. So it is just hold the faith for resolution and take active steps to manage your distress while you're in it, I would say.
Amazing summary. Thank you, Ruth. And as I said before, I think all of you just take time to look after yourselves this evening and going forward. We're here to help you, so call us for whatever you need, if you need to, or just take your time. But thank you so much, Ruth. This webinar is on the website in the next few days if you want to revisit it, and or get in contact if you'd like to make an appointment with any of our counsellors. But we'll say good night and thank you so much. Thanks so much. Bye bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.